we're going to be moving on to the third question. And just so everyone knows, we have a scheduled break at 3 o'clock, so we're still 18 minutes away. And the third question, the order of responses, we're going to have Karen, who you just heard from. She'll be leading us off with this next question. Then we'll have Mayra, then we'll have Vicky, Tom, and then Joe. So the third question is this. It's a question that you've already touched on, each of you, several times, and so you're going to love this question. Do you think Woodland has a housing problem? If you do, what is the problem and how will you address it? And so this question goes to Karen first.
All right, thank you so much. Does Woodland have a housing problem? Yes, Woodland does have a housing problem. And there are a number of different facets to this particular problem. One of the problems is that it's very difficult to find an affordable apartment in Woodland. When I moved here from Sacramento, that was 17 years ago, that was a real chore, I tell you, to find an affordable apartment on an educator salary. But we have some other issues too. Our mid-range employees, so that would be kind of people who are making teacher salaries, 40-ish, 50-ish thousand, find it really difficult to be able to afford to buy a house. I have some great concerns about the East Growth Specific Plan area, which is the Conway Ranch area, which is being built just east of a water treatment plant. I'm concerned about housing prices, housing values for that community, as well as their quality of life. This property is also stated to be a self-contained community, and I worry how that will impact the rest of the community feel that Woodland has. I also have concerns about the lack of a Spring Lake fire department, whether the response times are too long, also a lack of water supply. Broadband is another issue that I'm very concerned about, as well as our parks, aging water pipes, and school facilities. So yes, Woodland does have a housing problem, and I hope that I'm able to address it if I'm elected to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, same question is coming to you, Mayra.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I do believe there's a housing problem here in Woodland. There are many longtime residents that are not able to afford to buy a home. We're talking about young professionals. Some of the other candidates have mentioned children and grandchildren who aren't able to stay in the community they grew up in. That is a problem. You know, that happened with me, and that's one of the reasons why I left my community where I grew up in. I don't want to see that happen in Woodland. Longtime residents, young professionals, educators, and families should be able to purchase homes in this community. You know, addressing homelessness is another issue that we need to continue to work together so that we have a long-term solution. The new services area that's being developed now is a start. We still have a lot of work to do. One of the other issues that came up as I'm talking to the district members is responsible growth and development. So while I think there's a general understanding that there's an additional need for residents, there's also a lot of concern about the unfinished developments and concerns about not balancing residential growth with additional businesses to ensure that Woodland doesn't become a bedroom community, or that the reality of the folks that are having to drive out of the area for work have the opportunity to, in the future, work here locally. I think that creates for a thriving community where you have more engaged members. You're cutting out 2-3 hours of commute time. That's important. You know, additionally, as we have more diverse housing options, we create more rich communities where there's diverse members within neighborhoods. And I think that's something that is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayra. And Vicky, same question to you.
Well, Woodland is no different than any other community in California. There is a housing crisis throughout our state, and I think that with COVID, we'll foreseeably see further impacts of a housing shortage and a housing crisis in Woodland, just like we will throughout our state. I think the importance of sustainable and affordable housing is crucial to Woodland, to make sure that we have the services, as others have stated, to maintain the growth that is occurring in our community, that we're able to have the services required to maintain those homeowners, and also to encourage perhaps our businesses to pay our residents a living wage so that they can afford to live in our community. So I think if we are all earning a decent wage and are able to maintain a household and afford a household in Woodland, that would be the ideal, to see that the labor force is being compensated for the kind of work that they're doing, that we take pride in the fact that we're an agricultural hub, that we also are paying our agricultural support essential workers the pay that they deserve, and so that they can afford to live in the community that they are helping to promote and who are prospering from their hard work. So Woodland is no different from any other community. We definitely have a housing issue that we need to address, and that we need to encourage that our workers are being compensated for the work that they do, and that they can afford and their housing, and that our community is also living a sustainable and we're conscientious about our environment as we do have that growth, and that we have those resources for our community members to live in Woodland. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll say the question one more time, and it'll be Tom, you're next, and then Joe. So here's your question again, Tom. Do you think Woodland has a housing problem? If you do, what is the problem, and how will you address it?
Well, first of all, I think Vicky Fernandez was right on. This is a statewide problem. The legislature has dealt with numerous bills in both of the last two sessions. Very little got done. It still needs statewide policy to help us all locally. But we actually are making reasonable progress in Woodland, in my opinion. We have 4 merchant builders working in the southeast area right now. So housing is being built in Woodland. But, you know, obviously, why can't we get more low income housing? It's a matter of economics. Nobody has the money to build them. It costs more to build them than you can derive in a rental structure. So how do you get the difference between those two amounts, and where does it come from? Right now, everybody who buys a new house in the southeast area is contributing around $11,000 to a fund to build such housing. A lot of that got committed to one of the Congrade housing projects out there in the southeast area. I don't personally feel that new home buyers should be subsidizing other people's homes. All of us as taxpayers in the state should be subsidizing this housing. Many of those are young families getting into the house for the first time, and yet they're paying for it, whereas those of us who've been sitting in comfortably in low Prop 13 basis houses don't have to contribute. That's not right in my view. In any event, we did approve those 14 condos. Those are additional homes. They're homes on Lincoln, and they're sold to people who are in them. There's another set of them, 16 of them being built as an infill project on Cleveland. We're working with someone out there across from Westgate Center, trying to build 161 units. We've made a number of changes to try to help them get into it, as was referenced earlier. So Woodland's got an obligation under state law to build low and very low income housing, or at least to provide zone land for that purpose. And we've been doing that through the general plan, which I helped develop. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. All right, Joe, your turn. Same question.
So I definitely think we have a big problem on our hands with housing. A few of the candidates have mentioned limiting and making Woodland a small place again. The genie's out of the bottle. We're growing, and we're going to continue to grow. And you know, as soon as I'm on city council, I'm going to make sure we grow, and we grow in the right way, protecting our citizens, increasing our public services, another key issue of mine, to make sure our city staff, our parks people, they're cutting the grass, they're trimming the trees, and we actually got to start cutting back on our contracts. That everything's contracted out. As a parks commissioner, I know this. We contract out to Dominguez for cutting our grass. We contract out for, services to cut our trees. We need to start hiring locally again. And I know the 2008 economic crisis hit. We cut about 22 people from the Parks Department. I want to start hiring slowly again. And then also looking at infill in the three first developments in Spring Lake were right after the economic crisis. So they stopped building. So I want to revisit those developments and start putting in houses in there. And then so we don't have to expand the general plan or the city limit for that matter anymore. I don't want to go into our ag land and start building up more homes. We have enough space that isn't built yet. And then on top of that, we have empty lots on Main Street all around Woodland. So I want to bring in businesses, and if we have to use eminent domain, let it happen if owners don't want to jump on board. But what's going to happen is we'll bring construction jobs with building, and then long-term jobs after those buildings are done, and then that'll actually bring in more businesses. And I already know that with the business park, we're going to have 2 million square feet of business, but we got to think about downtown. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, and that concludes the full round of our third question.